Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily podcast. I'm your host, Neil C. Hughes, and today we delve into a conversation of critical importance. And that is balancing technological innovation with ecological responsibility. For example, 5G networks, the backbone of modern communication, combined with IoT, the Internet of Things, have taken the world by storm in recent years. And yet the question arises, what is the environmental cost of these changes? Now, to explore how the tech industry is striving for a greener, more sustainable future, I'm thrilled to welcome Jeni Barovian, the VP and GM of the Network and Edge Compute Division at Intel. Now, Jeni leads Intel's efforts to reduce energy consumption and the carbon footprint of 5G network, and she's going to join us today to discuss a myriad of aspects ranging from the industry-wide collaboration between technology vendors, operators and governments to the cutting-edge hardware and software improvements driving us all towards net zero targets. So expect to hear more about functional data and its use to overcome operational challenges, and maybe some concrete examples from Intel that reflect its commitment to power-efficient 5G networks and products. So buckle up and hold on tight, because no matter where you're listening in the world, I'm going to be beaming your ears all the way to Arizona, where Jeni's waiting to share her insights, which are as pertinent to the boardroom as it is to the living room. But enough from me. Let's get Jeni on the show now. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Jeni. Can you tell everyone listening a little about who you are and what you do?
Thanks so much for having me, Neil. I'm really excited to be here. I have been with Intel for over 24 years now. Kind of amazing to think about that. And all of that time has been spent in our growth businesses. So that includes areas like networking and communications, IoT, edge computing. And I've held a number of roles within these businesses, whether it's applications engineering, solutions architecture, strategic planning, product management. Specifically now, my responsibility is I lead our network and edge compute division. And what my team and I have responsibility for is the silicon and software portfolio that really forms the platform foundation for network and edge infrastructure around the world. So we partner with our customers, our ecosystem, and our end users to innovate next-gen technology that unlocks customer value and opportunities in so many different industries, including telecom, manufacturing, energy, federal, consumer industries, so many different areas. And it's really exciting to be a part of this and be a part of these growth businesses. But specifically, what's exciting from working at Intel is the ability to really drive innovation at scale.
Fantastic. It's a huge pleasure to have you on the podcast. There's so many different things I'm excited to talk to you about, and especially in the sustainability space, because I've been reading recently that Intel is working to reduce energy consumption and indeed the carbon footprint of 5G networks. But just to set the scene for our conversation today, let's start with a big picture. Why do or should operators care about making 5G networks sustainable?
This is definitely something we all care deeply about, and it's definitely true in networking, just like all of us share this concern. And specifically, if you look at where that concern arises from, operators really, they understand the fact that they're actually generating quite a bit of energy demand and resultingly quite a bit of carbon footprint. And estimates really vary depending upon which analyst or data source you look at, but roughly data centers and networks worldwide account for 3% of global electricity use and carbon footprint. And so that's a big impact. And it's something that definitely operators want to improve upon. But then demand is increasing at the same time, right? So if you look at where mobile traffic is increasing out in time, it's a tenfold increase over the next 5 years due to the explosion of 5G and private networks and IoT and edge infrastructure. But at the same time, you look at the requirements that are coming out of areas like the Paris Accords, those insist that we need to reduce our carbon footprint while that demand is increasing in order to mitigate and ideally reverse the effects of climate change. So it's really a question of how do we go about that, because they're kind of conflicting objectives, right? So in addition to addressing their own carbon footprint, these operators in the telco industry have a really crucial role, not only, again, addressing their own operations, but enabling reduction in emissions in other industries that they serve with their networking solution in advances and solutions that enable more intelligence in the infrastructure, better control, better utilization of services. They're basically driving more intelligence into the infrastructure. And this in turn can help other industries achieve their sustainability goals. And so really what this is the imperative, right? The problem statement is how do they simultaneously deliver on this commitment, these commitments that they're all making ultimately towards net zero emissions, while also meeting this huge demand in increase for traffic, and then also delivering on this opportunity to serve those industries with their sustainability goals. So it's a huge challenge, and it's really incumbent upon us to be a part of helping build and power those networks in an energy efficient way and really more sustainably.
And I would imagine balancing 5G's benefits with the environmental impact is much trickier than it sounds. And 5G technology does promise enormous benefits, but also raises quite a few concerns around energy consumption. So I've got to ask, how is Intel navigating this delicate balance between leveraging 5G's advantages and minimizing its environmental impact? And are you able to share any maybe specific strategies or innovations that Intel has implemented?
Yeah, for sure. In my observations and working both with the telco industry as well as so many other vertical industries across who are implementing edge computing solutions, the network industry is definitely one of the most ambitious when it comes to tackling the sustainability objectives. If you look at some of the data coming out of the International Energy Agency, or IEA, they recognize that the rapid improvements in energy efficiency have already helped moderate this growth in energy demand. If you go back to 2010, despite the huge increases in digital services and that forecasted tenfold increase in traffic that I talked about a minute ago, the growth in emissions from data had actually only been modest, thanks to an increased focus on renewable energy and incorporation of renewable energy sources into the infrastructure for information and communications technology, and really achieving broader decarbonization in electricity grids in so many different regions. So there definitely is a huge explosion in infrastructure, but those systems themselves are more efficient, and the operators are deploying more innovative methods to drive that energy consumption down. So you asked about specific Intel innovations that are making this possible. So I want to spend a little bit of time talking about the RAN, because that definitely is the largest portion of the telco network in terms of energy consumption. And so that's an area that we focus on as well. So if we look at some of our technology within our 4th gen Intel Xeon scalable processors, we have integrated a technology called Intel VRAM Boost. And this is specialized acceleration. It lives in the processor itself. And previously, this was technology that was in an external accelerator card. So by integrating it into the CPU, we're reducing the power required to deliver that capability. And this delivers, we're already seeing tremendous gains in the migration from our 3rd gen Intel Xeon to our 4th gen Intel Xeon. But integrating this technology directly into the CPU provides another 20% above and beyond the performance per watt gains that we get just merely from the processor generation migration. And this is just one example of where we're collaborating with customers and industry partners to create RAN solutions that meet this need for, again, an explosion in more computing processing power to deal with that explosion in traffic, but doing so with more efficiency and less energy. And so this is really it's just one example of a 5G technology innovation that makes it possible for operators to really address those needs to bend the energy curve and really that carbon footprint curve in the other direction.
And I would imagine another challenge is that there are many different players in the network ecosystem, which all have different motivations. So can you just expand on what Intel's role is in driving sustainability innovation through these 5G networks to maybe bring to life what we're talking about here?
Yeah, all of this can only be realized through partnership across the value chain. This truly is a team sport. And really, when you think about the massive global challenge that we're facing with sustainability, it's only going to be achieved by everyone focusing on these really audacious goals to improve our outcomes. So we're focused on innovating and delivering power efficient products and demonstrated solutions that then showcase how we can help customers leverage capabilities in the platform like telemetry and real-time power management to achieve their energy efficiency goals in their infrastructure, but save that power, reduce the energy efficiency, but also still meet all of those performance demands, because it doesn't help if you can't achieve your performance and capacity and SLAs, even if you're saving energy. You've got to be able to do both. So I just wanted to kind of go through a couple examples of where we are deploying technology, but then also driving value to those customers. So I mentioned 4th Gen Intel Xeon scalable processors just a moment ago, and I talked about them in the context of the RAN, virtualized RAN deployments. If we look at the 5G mobile core network, this is another critical area where 4th Gen Intel Xeon is providing value. And we've been able to demonstrate the industry's first 1 terabit of performance for a 5G user plane function workload with a single dual socket server. So it's a huge gain in performance, which ultimately delivers, again, this balance of performance but ultimately energy efficiency. So what we've innovated on top of that is something that we call Intel Infrastructure Power Manager for 5G core. This is software that is able to, while you're achieving that peak performance, drive to a power savings of 30%. And so really it's that ability to enable customers to achieve both performance and power savings at the same time. So that's kind of some examples of what's going on in the processors and in the software that's enabling power management technology in the processors. But then if we look at the system level, there's innovation that we're driving into the industry, into the ecosystem as well. So one example is modular designs. When you think about circularity and the need to reduce waste and focus on improving modularity of our systems is one way to achieve those goals and really reduce carbon footprint and emissions and be able to also save costs so that an operator can amortize their investment over a longer period of time. Instead of swapping out an entire server, they could swap out just a component of the server. So we're working on innovating modular server designs in areas like OCP, the Open Compute Project, partnering with various players across the ecosystem to make reference designs and modular server designs more broadly available. Another key area of system design is in thermal management. So we're focused on innovating thermal management technologies that make heat capture and reuse practical. A key area of focus here is liquid cooling. This includes technologies like cold plate and liquid immersion cooling and other areas of focus. And we're working with partners on validating those solutions with our components and in Intel-based systems. And we're also offering an industry-first immersion cooling warranty rider for select Xeon processors to be able to use our server-class processors in liquid immersion cooling environments. So a lot of really exciting innovation that we're focused on driving into the value chain.
And as you said, sustainability in the 5G network space, it requires a collaborative effort. It is a team sport. So can you tell me a little bit more about Intel's approach to fostering collaboration among your tech vendors, operators, service providers, governments, NGOs, and so many other industry stakeholders? Because I suspect there will be a lot of business leaders listening that have fell at this hurdle many times in the past and looking for a few pointers. So can you expand on how you're doing this?
I'm excited about your listeners hearing this because we're always looking for new opportunities to collaborate. It's essential to realizing this era of sustainable computing. It's a top priority for Intel, and we're making sure that we use our market position and capabilities to connect compute ecosystems to engage directly with our customers and also engage with industry peers. So this includes, you listed off several, right? OEMs, ODMs, cloud service providers, operators, policymakers. The ultimate goal is we have to partner together to drive emissions reductions and promote industry-wide improvements in these sustainability goals. So I'll just give one example. We recently announced a collaboration with Red Hat and Ericsson and are really focused on a clear better together story that combines silicon experience with software innovation for sustainable computing. I mentioned earlier some improvements that that we're driving into RAN solutions. Our collective work across Red Hat, Ericsson, and Intel on Cloud RAN has delivered excellent performance per watt gains to address RAN requirements through application-aware dynamic power management. If I look a little bit more broadly, Intel participates and leads in a number of industry consortia towards the ultimate goal of accelerating greenhouse gas emission reductions across the value chain. All of our footprints are intertwined. Anything that we do as a company impacts our upstream and downstream partners. So we have to work together to make meaningful improvements, and industry consortia are definitely a critical place to do that. It's also essential, though, that we know what we're talking about. And so driving a common methodology and a common set of language and KPIs and ways of computing, calculating, and reporting carbon footprint is absolutely critical to set goals and then understand how we are progressing against those goals. If we're not measuring our data in the same way, we can't make meaningful improvements. So those are just a few examples of collaboration. There's so many. And like I said, I look forward to if there's any connections that we can make as a result of this podcast to continue to make progress in this area.
And listening to you today, it's easy to see how Intel has been actively involved in driving improvements through things like hardware, software, and AI for 5G to help better reach your net zero targets. But I'm curious, how important are automation and AI in the drive for energy efficiency?
Super important.
Yeah.
Our operators that we work with, they are pursuing infrastructure transformation to improve efficiency as well as scalability of their infrastructure. So, if we look at just kind of at a base level, virtualization and cloud technologies are really a key part of this transformation. But really, ultimately, we're going to see the best gains in operational efficiency through increased automation. At a base level, automation requires telemetry information about the hardware, the software, and the services operating at a system level and really overall at a facility or across the infrastructure. This includes data like events and faults and other utilization of different software and hardware resources, and then the services running on top of those systems. And so ultimately, the goal is to implement closed loop automation solutions. And increasingly, these are solutions that are equipped with analytics and machine learning technologies to help monitor and assess infrastructure events and really improve orchestration of the infrastructure overall. And really the goal is to not just be responsive to what's going on, but ultimately drive predictive capabilities in order to improve outcomes. So you could apply these approaches to any aspect of automating infrastructure, but it's really critical when you think about an opportunity to improve energy efficiency and power management in infrastructure. And it provides a more holistic perspective to manage energy consumption and ultimately greenhouse gas emissions. So if I just look at an example, if you think about 4G or 5G networks, they are provisioned to support the peak throughput, the highest possible data throughput, because they need to be reliable. They need to make sure that they can stand up to the highest demands. If you think about a cell tower driving by, we drive by them all day long, right, on a freeway. This needs to be capable of delivering that peak throughput during the highest point in the day, during rush hour traffic. And so that also means that at peak performance, it historically has meant peak power. But those traffic levels are not sustained throughout the day. So rush hour may be the highest time during the day, but in the middle of the afternoon at 2 p.m. or in the middle of the night at 2 a.m., the same performance isn't demanded. And so therefore, we want to make sure we can modulate that energy consumption during those times where the demand is not as high. So again, we want to be able to take advantage of being responsive to those needs, but also being predictive, because those patterns are predictable, right? And so that's a great place to implement those types of AI and automation technologies. If we look into the future, sustainable computing won't be limited to energy efficiency on the platform, but it's also focused more broadly on getting smart about what we use in terms of energy sources. So we want to be able to obviously look very pragmatically at energy consumption, but then also marry that with greener energy sources so that we can build networks and build infrastructure that are carbon aware, but then ultimately create behaviors that are carbon responsive. And so what that means is the computing elements of all types across PCs, servers, EVs, IoT devices, network infrastructure, all these different types of equipment, also in data centers, collaborate with the shared goal to prioritize the usage and availability of energy with the least carbon intensity energy sources, such as wind, water, and solar, thereby accelerating the transition to renewable energy and making maximum use of those green energy sources.
So looking ahead, Jeni, what are Intel's long-term strategies and goals for sustainable 5G development? Is there anything you can share about how you envision the evolution of 5G technology in line with things like global sustainability targets? And also, what role will Intel play in shaping that future?
Yeah, one of the most interesting things that we're seeing operators do is more formally building sustainability requirements and targets into supplier selection and purchasing decisions. Historically, sustainability was a bit more of a nice to have. It might have been requested as part of supplier selection, but now it's becoming a requirement and really an increasing requirement in that overall process. And specifically within that, the conversation has also shifted to the impacts of embodied carbon in addition to operational carbon. And that's when you really have to take a look at how the technology has been created. And so this is where the way that Intel operates is so important to the rest of the downstream value chain that utilizes our technology. What really sets us apart as a company is that we are an integrated device manufacturer, and this gives us a unique point of view in the overall ecosystem because we are designing and developing silicon, but we're also building it too in our factories around the world. And so we have a number of goals within our operations to achieve 100% renewable electricity across our global operations by the end of this decade, by 2030. And we do talk a lot about energy consumption and as a contributor to our overall carbon footprint, but also we focus on waste and water. Water is used pretty extensively in semiconductor manufacturing, and we've got a goal to achieve net positive water across our global operations, and then also zero waste to landfill by the end of the decade. And if we look at the end of last year and our progress against that goal, we're at 93% renewable electricity globally. We're at net positive water in the US and India, and we sent only 6% of our waste to landfill. I like to dwell on this water thing quite a bit because I live here in the desert in Arizona in the southwestern US. So water is of utmost concern. And I am very proud to work for a company that focuses so much on achieving not just neutral, but net positive water back to the land that we're on. But we're also focused on achieving net zero greenhouse gas emissions in our worldwide operations by 2040. And that includes both our scope 1 and our scope 2, and then also net zero upstream scope 3 greenhouse gas emissions from our suppliers by 2050. And so if I kind of take this back to the ecosystem, if you look at the definitions of greenhouse gas emissions in the context of scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3, everything is intertwined. Our scope 1 is our own operations. Our scope 2 is the footprint of our energy sources. And then scope 3 is the upstream and downstream players that we are connected to. So our scope 1 and scope 2 impacts our customers and partners scope 3 and vice versa. And so you truly can only solve these global challenges associated with climate change and sustainability if we all partner together. And ultimately, we hope to see the entire technology ecosystem achieve net zero.
And if we zoom out for a moment and just look at the bigger picture, essentially, we're talking about a global approach to 5G sustainability. So is there anything else you can share about how Intel is working with international partners, etc., to help ensure that energy reduction and sustainability goals are aligned ultimately across different regions and regulatory landscapes, which again is much trickier than it sounds to achieve, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, the impacts of climate change are being felt in every community around the world, basically every day. So taking a global approach is essential. And some of this comes back to the comments I made earlier about industry consortia. It's really imperative that we take a united approach to learn from each other. One of the best things about technology and what excites me and keeps me going in my work is that it holds the ability to solve the world's greatest challenges. So it's really about how we come together and bring this expertise to bear to make a meaningful difference in tackling these global problems. So from a network perspective, we also need to consider what's going on in different regions around the globe. At Intel, we've got employees in more than 50 countries around the world, and we're keenly aware that there isn't a single answer for sustainability. I've had conversations with operators all around the world. If you look at Europe, they've got some of the most stringent policies and approaches to sustainable business practices. Then you look at Australia, which is more commonly hitting extreme temperatures in a sparsely populated landscape. And so, again, it just varies based on where you look. And not only is connectivity key, but we also have to consider how we cool and power this infrastructure and keep it protected from the elements. And so while we're innovating technologies, some of which I listed off before, that can be broadly applicable, we're also working very closely where there are regional differences in ensuring that those solutions are addressing the unique needs of those environments.
Well, a big thank you for spending 30 minutes with me today to share your invaluable insights with everyone listening. But before I let you go, I'm going to ask you to leave everyone listening with one final gift. And that is we have a Spotify playlist and an Amazon wish list. All I'm going to ask is for you to either recommend a book or a song that means something to you. But all I'll ask is, what would you like to leave and why?
I was inspired by your question about a song, and I've been pondering a song I've loved for several years, but I've been thinking about it a lot more recently. And the title of the song is Harmony Hall by the band Vampire Weekend. Well, first of all, it's just a really great piece of songwriting and production. So I definitely encourage your listeners to go pull up your Spotify playlist and listen to it on their own. It has a really, in the songwriting, specifically lyrically, it has a really powerful message about using power for good or evil. And it's a really great reminder of the responsibility that we here at Intel and all of us have across the value chain in using the power of technology and the power of innovation that we create for stewardship of the planet in chasing these very audacious goals regarding climate change. And it's something that is so essential that we focus on using our power for good for that purpose. And so I think this song is a great reminder of that.
Oh, great tune. I'm a big Vampire Weekend guy, so I'm going to get that
fantastic.
straight to the playlist. And of course, Intel is a huge website. For anyone interested in how Intel working towards reducing energy consumption and the carbon footprint of 5G networks, is there anywhere you'd like to point everyone listening?
Yes, please go to intel.com/sustainability for our efforts more broadly across the company in sustainability, and then intel.com/network for all of our efforts in working with global operators around the world. And you can also reach out to me directly on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Well, I get those links added so people can find it nice and easily. And love chatting with you today about how the industry can better balance the benefits of 5G with the need to reduce environmental impact and also meet corporate sustainability targets, but also things like the need for collaboration as an industry ecosystem, latest improvements in hardware, software, AI, and beyond, not to mention the importance of functional data and how you're innovating. So much gold in everything that you've talked about today. And on top of all that, you even left us with a great tune by Vampire Weekend. So thank you for sharing your insights with me today.
Thanks so much, Neil. It was really great to talk with you today.
And there you have it, a deep dive into the intertwined narratives of 5G technology and sustainability with Jeni Barovian of Intel. And our conversation today emphasised a multi-layered approach to this very complex issue. From the technical intricacies like Intel's VRAM boost and infrastructure power management, to the high-level strategy of global partnerships, I think it's evident that there is no one-size solution for everything here. But Jeni underscores the importance of a cooperative approach within the technology ecosystem. And I think it served up as a timely reminder that this isn't a challenge that any entity can tackle in isolation, whether it's innovating thermal management technologies, prioritising energy consumption, or using greener energy sources. The emphasis on global approaches and international collaborations, that's where the magic happens. But to achieve true sustainability, it will take a symphony of efforts from vendors to governments and NGOs to, yes, you and me. We are all stakeholders in this future, a future that promises to be as complex as it is exciting. So as Jeni and I concluded there, I think the key message is it's not just about reducing footprints, but it's about leaving a positive imprint on both the environment and human progress. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on anything we talked about today. techblogwriter@outlook.com if you want to carry this conversation on with me or have a question you want to ask me. If you want to connect with me on socials, just look for @NeilC.Hughes on LinkedIn, Twitter, etc. And if you want to work with me, techblogwriter.co.uk. That's my website where I help businesses launch their own podcast. They just record the interview and leave me to worry about getting on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and editing those audio files, setting RSS feeds up and things. But if your leadership team needs help with ghostwritten thought leadership articles, or your business needs help with business blogs, I can help with that too. But that's enough from me. I've taken up far too much of your time today. So just a big thank you for listening as always. And until next time, don't be a stranger.